everyone, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm bringing you 4 all new Easter and spring decor DIYs. I had so much fun creating all of the projects in today's video, and I really hope that you enjoy them. If you do, please be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Now let's go ahead and get started. For the first DIY today, I'm going to be starting out with a scrap piece of wood that I had in my stash, and this one measures at 7 1/4 inch by 1 1/2 inch. And the first thing I did to this piece of wood was just painted it with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Ivory. I'm also going to be using 6 of these unfinished wood eggs, and these are from Dollar Tree. I'm going to be painting each one of the eggs a different color. This first one here I'm painting with my Folk Art matte acrylic paint in the color Pink or Wild Rose, and then I'm going to be painting this next one that's like a teal color, and this one is also from Folk Art in the color Cascade. Then I'm going to be painting this yellow one in the color Summer Porch. This next one I'm going to be painting more of like a green color, and it's called Sage Shadow, also from Folk Art. And then this next gray color one is in French Linen from Folk Art. And then finally, the last one that I'm painting is a light pink in the color Vintage Victorian, also from Folk Art. Then I'm going to be using some of these unfinished wood letters that spell out the word Easter. I believe these ones are from Hobby Lobby, and I'm going to be painting each letter with my Waverly paint in the color Ivory. Next, I'm taking some of this polka dot ribbon from Hobby Lobby, and I'm wrapping it around the front of my wood piece, and then I'm just cutting that down to size and then gluing the ends of that ribbon along the back side. I'm then gonna start placing all of my eggs on the front of my wood piece right over top of my ribbon, and once I have them all placed where I want them to be, I start gluing each one of the eggs down. After I had all of my eggs glued down, then I started gluing down all of my letters that spell out Easter, and I'm just gluing those right in the center of each one of my eggs. You could leave the project just like this if you wanted to have a simple look, but I did want to add some detail, so I hot glued Spanish moss all the way around the bottom edges of all of my eggs, and then it did look really messy, but after I had the moss all glued on, I just took my scissors and trimmed it down quite a bit, and then I started adding tiny little flowers in between all of the eggs along the bottom over top of my moss. The really tiny white flowers are from Hobby Lobby, and I did have to cut them down off of their stems, and then the little pink ones that I'm using are from Joann Fabrics, and I also cut those down quite a bit so that it was just like the top of the flower. Originally, I was going to do a white flower, then pink, then white, then pink, but then I ended up just adding the pink underneath all of the white flowers, and I love the way that that looked together. This is what my piece looks like all finished, and I think it turned out so cute. It was really fun to create, and I love all of the little details on it. Now moving into DIY number 2. For this one, I'm starting out with 3 of the unfinished wood planks from Dollar Tree. And the first thing I did was just use an old towel to apply my Folk Art wood tint in the color Walnut. I thought it would be really cute to frame those wood pieces with some of this wood trim that I picked up from Home Depot, and it does come in a really long piece, and I just cut them down so that it would frame the 3 wood planks. And then I ended up painting each one of these with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Ivory. Once everything was dry, I then started to assemble everything together. I have my 3 wood pieces pressed together, and then I did start gluing on my trim. I hot glued this top wood trim piece, and then I remembered that I wanted to add some popsicle sticks along the back of the 3 wood planks, so I ended up stopping before I started gluing the rest of the trim on, and I just very quickly put 2 popsicle sticks along the back side of all 3 of those planks, just so that it was a little bit more secure and held together. So once I had the popsicle sticks on, I then continued to hot glue all of the trim pieces around the edges of my planks. Then to add a little bit of distressing to the trim and really make the detail on those pop, I used some of my Java Color chalk paint from Folk Art, and I very lightly dry brushed this color over top, and I just love the way that it made all of that detail pop on that trim. The focal point of this project is going to be this bunny head that I got from Dollar Tree, and I'm painting it with the Waverly paint in the color Ivory, and I did just one quick coat of this paint. Then once that paint was all dry, I wanted to add some detail, so I took some hot glue and drew a line with it right underneath the bunny's ears, and then I added some Spanish moss, and then I just trimmed the moss down a little bit so that it wasn't so messy. And then I thought it would be so cute to add these little pink flowers from Joann Fabrics along the Spanish moss. So I'm just cutting the flowers down pretty much as small as they can possibly get, and then I'm hot gluing them going all the way across that Spanish moss. Next, I took 2 pieces of jute and I'm going to be tying them together in a bow. I'm then hot gluing that bow on the left bunny ear right above all of the flowers. Next, it was time for me to add a bunny face. So for my eyes, I am going to be painting on closed bunny eyes. I've seen this design on a lot of different like holiday Easter decor, and I think it is so cute. So here I'm just hand painting on my eyes with my rich black chalk paint from Folk Art. My eyes are not perfect because I am pretty bad at hand painting, but I did the best that I could. And then I'm going to be using this pink button from Dollar Tree, and I just hot glued that underneath my eyes for the nose. And then for the mouth of my bunny, I'm also going to be hand painting that on, and I just used that same rich black chalk paint and I painted on pretty much like a W shape underneath the nose. Another piece I'm going to be using on this project today is this Happy Easter woodward cutout. This one is from Hobby Lobby, and the color that I'm painting it today is the Wild Rose color from Folk Art. Once this piece has dried, I'm then going to start piecing everything together. I placed my bunny head on the lower portion inside of my frame, and then the Happy Easter woodward cutout right above the bunny's head. And to attach them, I just used some hot glue on the back side. For the very last step in this project, I'm going to be adding a hanger, and I'm just using some of this pink string that I picked up from Hobby Lobby around Valentine's Day, and I just made knots on each end of the string, and then I hot glued those on the back side of my frame. And this is what my piece looks like all finished. I really love the rustic elements of this one, and I think it just goes perfect with pretty much any Easter decor. And now for DIY number 3. For this one, I'm going to be using a 6-inch wreath ring, and this is from the Woodpile brand at Hobby Lobby. And the first thing I'm doing to it is just painting the entire thing with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Ivory. I'm then going to be adding some of these wood pieces onto the very front of my wreath ring. These wood pieces I did also pick up from Hobby Lobby, and I'm not really sure what they're called, but they look kind of like wooden caps. And I'm just going to be using some hot glue to attach them, and I am using 25 of them today. I am going to have a small space at the very top of my wreath ring that does not have these little wood pieces, but that's because I'm going to be adding something else to that space later on, so I want to have that space open. Once I have all 25 of them added, I'm then going back in with my Waverly paint in Ivory, and I'm just painting all of the wooden caps this same color. You could always just put your wood caps on and then paint everything in the ivory color, but I always like to do things the hard way. After that ivory color has completely dried, I'm then going to be distressing all of the wood caps a little bit, and I'm using my Folk Art chalk paint in the color Java to do that. I just put a little bit of paint on my brush and then wiped off the excess, and then whatever was left on the brush after that, I just painted over top of all of the caps. I'm going to be using this bunny ears piece from Hobby Lobby. It did have these flowers on the front, but I pulled those off, and then also the wire on the bottom of it, I just wiggled back and forth a few times and popped that right off. And then for the ears, I'm just going to be hot gluing those on in the space that does not have those wooden caps. I just placed a really good amount of hot glue on and then just held the bunny ears into place until they were all set. And then I added some Spanish moss in that open space. And then the flowers that came on the bunny ears piece, I just took those apart because I wanted to glue individual pieces on so that I could get them placed exactly where I wanted them to be without them looking too bulky. I ended up using 2 of the smaller pieces on each side and then 1 smaller piece right in the center. And I think it looked way better this way than the original one that looked really bulky. Then to add some color to this piece, I'm using some of these mini pink flowers from Joann Fabrics. You guys have seen me use these in multiple projects so far this year. That's because they are my absolute favorite. I just love how really pretty and dainty they are. So what I ended up doing with these is just I pulled them apart so that they were in smaller pieces, and then I hot glued them all around the greenery on this piece. Then it was time for me to make my bow, and I'm using this really pretty pink ribbon from Dollar Tree, and I am going to be creating a double bow. I've been showing this in a lot of my videos, and I'll let you guys know how I do it one more time. I wrapped the ribbon around my pointer and my middle finger twice. I then took the end of the ribbon and I pushed that through, like where there's a V at the very bottom of your 2 fingers where they meet your hand. I'm then pulling that end of the ribbon through that hole, and then I'm taking the end of that ribbon and pulling it over and in between my pointer finger and my middle finger, and then there's a little loop at the bottom that I'm pulling the end of the ribbon back up and through, and then just pulling that end super tight. I'm then adding that bow right in the center of all of my flowers, and then I am going to be adding 1 very bright pink flower, and this came in a pack of flowers from I think around Valentine's Day at Hobby Lobby this year. I just took the stem of the flower off and then hot glued it right in the center of my double bow. And this is what my wreath looks like all finished. I think it looks so different than a lot of the things I've seen out this year, and it was super easy to create. Now for the 4th and final DIY today. For this one, I'm using 3 of these unfinished wood bunnies from Hobby Lobby. One of the bunnies has ears that stick straight up, and the other 2 bunnies have an ear that is going to either the left or right. I'm also using 3 of these tumbling tower game blocks from Dollar Tree, and the first thing that I'm doing is painting on my wood tint in the color Walnut from Folk Art. I would paint the wood tint on, and then I would wipe away the excess with a old rag, and I did this to all 3 of them. Then I'm painting all 3 of my bunnies with my Waverly paint in the color Ivory. Once that paint has completely dried, I'm then taking an old candle and I'm rubbing the wax all over the front and back side of all 3 of my bunnies. This is going to give me a really chippy paint look. I've used this technique in a few of my videos and I really like how it's turned out, so I keep using this technique on other projects. Once I have all of the wax on, I'm then going to be painting all 3 of my bunnies, but all 3 of them are going to be different colors. This first one that I'm doing here is from Folk Art, and it's in the color Glacier. And then I'm going to be painting this second one here with the color Summer Porch, and this one is also from Folk Art. And then for the very last one, I did paint that in the color Vintage Victorian, also from Folk Art. So once I have them painted and the paint's all dry, I'm then placing a duct tape over all of the bunnies, making sure I rub it on very well, and then I'm just peeling back the tape, and it is now going to take off all of that top layer of paint that had the wax underneath of it. And I continue to do this step for all 3 of my bunnies, and this is just such a super easy way to give a chippy look on projects that are a little bit smaller. I know a lot of people use Vaseline. That is a good way to do it as well, but I really like this wax and tape method. You can see here that I'm adding some jute around the neck of my bunny, and I'm tying a really small bow. I did do this on all 3 of my bunnies, and then to keep the jute bow into place, I did add a little bit of hot glue right underneath of it. For the bunny that I painted yellow, and it does have the ear where it is going to the right side, I added a little bit of Spanish moss right where the ear meets the top of the bunny's head. And then I'm going to be adding some of these really cute purple flowers. This flower set came from Joann Fabrics, and I did just cut really tiny pieces of the flower, and then I'm just hot gluing those on top of the Spanish moss. And then I am adding one of these tiny white flowers that came from a stem that I had from Hobby Lobby, and I just love those two colors paired together. I did the same thing for the blue bunny where it has the ear going to the left side. I added the Spanish moss and then a little bit of the purple flowers, and then again one of the white flowers. And then you probably guessed it, for the pink bunny where it has the double ears sticking straight up, I did kind of like a headband. I did the Spanish moss going across both of the ears, and then I did purple flowers on each side, and then one white flower right in the center. For the last step, I'm adding some hot glue in the center of my Tumbling Tower game blocks, and I'm just hot gluing all 3 bunnies on all 3 blocks. And this is what the bunnies look like all finished. A really easy, affordable project for Easter this year. And these would even be perfect separated on a tiered tray. I really hope that you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed, I hope that you will consider subscribing. Please be sure to hit the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any future videos. I would love to hear in the comments which project from today's video is your favorite, and if you plan on decorating for Easter this year. Thank you so much for watching.